Hello, everybody. My name is Maurice Button. I'm the CEO of City and Financial Global, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the next in our series of speaker interviews. Today, we have with us Jane Finlayson-Brown, a partner at Allen & Overy. And Jane is going to be speaking at our AI in Financial Services Summit in London on the 21st of November. Jane, welcome.
Thank you very much. Very nice to be with you today.
Very good to have you with us. Let's turn to the first question. There's been a great deal of debate about the need to strike a balance between protecting consumers and possibly society as a whole, on the one hand, and ensuring that we reap the huge potential benefits that AI can offer humanity and society on the other. Where do you think that balance should be struck and why?
So I think it's a really interesting question, actually, and it sort of reveals perhaps a perspective that is slightly different to, I guess, the premise of the question, which is that you can have regulation that is pro-innovation. And in fact, some degree of regulation, I think, can be very helpful. So companies hate uncertainty. And so if you have a lot of overlap or duplication among regulatory initiatives, or as we have at the moment, so many well-meaning organizations giving guidance and trying to help people, there's a plethora of sort of rules or suggestions that one might be following. And, so I guess people might say, well, the fact that there's nothing hard and fast is helpful, but, you can do what you want. But at the same time, I think people find that quite confusing and difficult. And, we know that a number of organizations like OpenAI have called actively for some regulatory guidance and some rules, some parameters, a policeman to blow a whistle and to tell them where the edges are to give them greater certainty. And I think actually perhaps there may be a benefit to having that regulation as a pro-innovation strategy to enable society to reap the benefits, both of the innovation and the protection, as it were. So
Yeah,
I
and of
guess I
course,
come from that a slightly different perspective.
yeah, and of course, the UK is doing just that. It's a pro-innovation approach to regulation. But before going into more detail about the regulation, I mean, obviously, all commentators, so-called futurologists, telling us about the impact of AI in society and how significant it will be. Do you agree with that? And more generally, in your personal view, which developments are likely to be the most profound?
I think AI as a potential future benefit for all of us is incredibly exciting, and we can already see it in some of the medical advances that have been made. So that I think is fabulous, really, for us all, and also, educational sort of aids for people being given
Yeah.
sort of very personalized learning experiences, really interesting. I mean, obviously, we have to worry about the downside risks of fake news and disinformation and bias and, encouraging conspiracy theories and effects on democracy, and cyber attacks. So there are so many different things we have to worry about. But yes, I think it will be quite revolutionary for us and for
Yeah.
society.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the potential benefits outweigh the downside, so long as we focus on the latter sufficiently. Now, turning back to regulation, the UK was very quick off the mark with its AI Safety Summit last week, and its declared aspiration to host the Global AI Safety Institute in the UK. However, even as they were departing from that summit, the US has said it's going to set up its own global AI Safety Institute. Is the UK likely to take back the regulatory initiative from the UK, having got off to a slightly slow start?
I think the US inevitably is an enormous market for AI and for some of the, the very largest and, sort of most innovative companies. A lot of them are based there. So the people who are leading and have poured billions into the development of these models. So inevitably the US is going to be a very big player, I think. Not to say that the UK will not also provide a really helpful sort of institute and a sort of a forum for people to discuss and have their models looked at. But I think, yeah, inevitably the US is going to be pretty powerful. And especially I think when you think about China is also developing its regulatory environment.
Yeah,
And if
yeah,
you look at the geopolitics of it all, the US will want from that reason as well to be sort of facing off in quite a muscular fashion to make sure that its voice is heard.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. And of course, you mentioned China as having got its own sort of AI regulatory framework, but the other region that has it is the EU, uh,
Yes.
and that is likely to be quite a play and quite an influence. Do you think the EU model is likely to be the blueprint for other countries around the world? Or do you think now that the US is making noises about having its own system, rather well thought through system, do you think they'll wait to see what the US is going to do?
So I think, as with GDPR, sort of companies have to decide how they build their systems and what processes they implement. And it's not great for global companies, particularly, to have to implement a huge patchwork of different things. Consistency is efficiency, and it's
Yeah.
also helpful from a safety perspective, if you're all playing to the same hymn tune. So
Mm,
to some extent, if we have, a huge market like the EU establishing some rules, people will want to look at what is the highest common denominator. Is that EU or is it US? And then build to that because it will
yeah.
work more or less everywhere. So I think we will see people beginning to think about what becomes the most sensible standard to build
Mm,
to, and perhaps implementing that as a sort of de facto, and obviously varying where they need to. As with GDPR, there are quite often, sort of local rules that you have to observe as well. So you might
yeah.
have a derogation for a particular jurisdiction where you do something additional.
Mm,
But yeah, so I think there'll be a sophisticated look at how the regulatory world is shaping up, and taking a sensible, pragmatic, but sort of with
mm.
the aim of that consistency in mind.
Yeah, it's quite a sort of complex, evolving landscape, isn't it? And of
Yeah.
course, the UN has recently announced, I think just perhaps yesterday, its high-level advisory body on artificial intelligence. How do you think that's going to sort of fit with this sort of myriad uh, regulatory patchwork, as you put it?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And that's at an early stage. But they're obviously not the only ones. The OECD has been really very active in this area for ages.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
Partnership and AI have promulgated some guidance, and then Alan Turing, Ada Lovelace. There are so many different pieces of guidance
Mm,
and recommendations. Not to say our own Information Commissioner's Office has done very good guidance actually on
mm,
the use of AI. So I think all sorts of companies will have to have a look at, a number of these. And there is a lot of commonality actually between the concerns that is driving the guidance in many places. So things like
yeah.
bias or accuracy, explainability. There are a lot of common themes. So people will, I guess, pull out those threads and try and sort of build those into their
Mm,
programs in a sort of thoughtful way. But there are
yeah.
even actually some very good open source regulatory frameworks that some companies have issued. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, where people have sort of got ahead of the block, but again, anticipated, because a lot of this is not entirely new, actually. There has been quite a lot of work on ethics of AI for many years, but obviously with the generative AI, it's absolutely, sort of pushed everybody onto a sort of more speedy trajectory to look at your car behind you on the wall, and everybody is now having to put their foot down and get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. On that relatively positive note, I
Yeah.
think we have to conclude the interview. So, for our viewers, I hope that you're very much going to be able to come and join us on the 21st of November in London to attend the AI and Financial Services Summit in person. Jane, thank you so much for sharing those insights with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Maurice.